markets. It's all about...
Put it in a headline.
T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live!
Welcome to the Hunter's Campfire Podcast. Pull up a chair and join Hurls, Jono and Mark as we share stories from the hunt, insights from the field, and a few laughs along the way. Whether you're chasing game or just love the outdoors, this is your place by the fire.
Good evening, Mark. Good evening, Graham.
Good evening.
Yes, so good evening, Jono, and good evening to episode 2 of Peers for Politics guest, Graham Park from Shooters Union. Thanks very much for joining us, Graham.
Well, thanks very much for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. I've seen a couple of different ones on there. I saw Robbie Catter was on, and I saw Tom Kenyon was on one of them, and so really happy to be invited on. I feel like I've stepped up in the world now.
well,
I'm a bit jealous of that deer head over Jono's head.
Yeah, no, he's a cracker.
well,
That one.
you can't see the Brisbane Valley Red there, and you can't see the New South Wales public land fallow there, and you can't see the 2 New South Wales public land goats over there, including the 36er, which came off public
Wow.
land.
A good one.
Yep, and just so you know, because it came up in conversations, we saw a bigger one once upon a time, but Jono decided that the best course of action was to blow out my eardrum.
That was kind of him.
Yeah. I didn't want him shooting the big one, so I thought, he doesn't even.
Luckily, there was no plane flying overhead because the 3006 went straight up in the air.
Well, yeah, that would be good. There wasn't a plane.
That was it.
So very noisy if it's close.
That's it. So we got some good ones, and of course a friendly buffalo up there as well. So
What caliber? Use that 9.3 by
So
7.
okay, so for the territory, we kind of run a bit of a mixed battery. First year, Jono took 9.3 by 62.
Yep.
And we found out that 9.3 by 64 won't fire out of a 9.3 by 62.
That's good to know.
Yep.
Yeah,
Always check your
Jono
ammo.
got some. So we got ammo because it was at the time they were about transporting ammo. So we got actually ammo delivered to the territory, and we picked it up. And they got the order wrong, and they gave him 9.3 by 64
66
or something
66.
like 66.
Yes.
You should have just stuck it harder.
We tried.
Yeah, well, on the very first day, we were along this creek bed, and I spotted a pig, and I got the camera up, and it was just perfect. I was going, "You take him, John. I got the camera going," and he's going,
I'm trying.
Something's wrong. The pig just wandered off.
That's definitely a concern.
Yes.
Yep. So
always check your
but
ammo.
on that first trip, we had 9.3s, and Ian was running a 3006.
You had a 375.
Was he at 375 the first year?
No, you had the 375, the Sarko 375.
That's right. I had a Sarko 375, and John had a 9.3, and Ian had a 3006. The second trip, Jono had the 9.3 again. I had a 9.3 by 74R in the double rifle, and Ian had a 300 Win Mag. And this year, there was 6 of us this year, so we had. I had John and I had both 9.3s, slightly different. He had a 62, I had a 74. Ian was running the 3006 again. We had a 7mm Ram Mag, and we had 2 375s on board as well.
Wow, that's great. I recently got a 405 Winchester, and I took it out pig hunting in December, and I got an hour out into the scrub in West Queensland with a friend, and we suddenly hit an area where I got texts, and I got about 10 texts in 2 minutes about Bondi, and it was the end of that hunt because I spent the next 3 days in his office taking it over and turning it into our media center and going to war, and then drove back to areas where I could get coverage from far West Queensland. Yes, it's a Winchester 1895 takedown made in 1915.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Beautiful.
was it the true big action lever action in 405?
Yeah. And it's quite fun to shoot. Not fun off a bench, but off your shoulder, it's fine.
Yeah, those big calibers are like that. That's for sure.
Yeah, they aren't.
Yeah. And so I'm very curious to see how it'll go on pigs or scrub bulls and things like that. But I chronographed it came with some factory ammo, and I chronographed, and it's coming out a bit over 2,200 feet a second. I think they're 300 grain. So it should thump fairly well.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
that'd be quite.
But it's beautiful, and it's just in great condition. It used to be owned. You probably know the guy, the gunsmith, Rob Bloomfield.
I was going to say with the Rob Blomfield gun, because I actually think I've seen that rifle.
Yeah, I got it from someone he sold it to, who's has a large retail store in Brisbane. You'll know, named Jade, and he bought it off Rob, and then had it for 3 or 4 years and never fired it. Just put it in the vault in the back of the shop for himself, because he thought, oh, they'll make a good gun for himself, and never used it. So I talked him out of it one day. But it is a lot of fun, and it just packs down so well for transport. But you don't want to have to buy ammunition for it.
No, that's Teddy Roosevelt's rifle, basically.
Yes. Yeah, it came with one of those old wooden boxes of ammo.
Okay.
Okay.
That you open up, and it also came with, I think, 150 rounds or something, which is quite a bit with that, because you don't tend to lay there and plink. But I've got all the reloading stuff to load it. So once you load it up, it's really no more expensive than reloading a 4570 or anything else, as long as you've got cases.
Before
I guess politics, except that politics ruined my hunting trip.
Yeah. Before I
find it difficult to ever forgive Anthony Albanese for that.
If that's your only problem, then I think you're in front.
I think there's a few others. Yeah.
I was going to say, before we had my lovely wife and I, before we had children, and I had a great wad of discretionary cash, I got Rob to build me a stock for my Tikka.
And he does a lovely work.
Yeah, it took a long time, but it was actually the first time I'd ever got
a time and a lot of money. But
yeah, it was it was a fair investment, and it was very much like getting a suit made. I think we spent about an hour and a half just picking the piece of timber. Just picking up.
Yep.
So I've got that. Yeah. So that's my deer rifle, which I'll be carrying on Tuesday when I go up to check the cameras for the first time since I've been back in Australia.
Oh, good.
But yeah,
that'll be fun.
Yeah. Just I've got 7 cameras up there, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a hard time finding one of them. For some reason, I decided to go really heavy and bury it right in the middle of the scrub, and I think I might have a time finding it this time.
Well, yes, that's happened to me before. I saw a beautiful big red dingo this morning on our property, and of course I just run up the paddock 500 yards and didn't take something.
Of course, it's always the way.
So he lives to roam and another. We actually get a bounty from our local council.
Yeah, well, I didn't. So one of the properties, I hunt 2 adjacent properties, and some years ago I shot a couple of dogs on there, and I told the owner, and he said, I didn't realise. He said, yeah, I get a bounty on those scalps. So I went back up and got them for him, and I said, here, you just take them in next time you're in town. He took them in, yeah.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah, I didn't realise. So yeah, it took them. Before we get lost in hunting stories, we should probably
we seem to be talking about hunting, not politics.
We should probably focus.
But you know what?
That's right.
You like hunting, you better get interested in politics.
Absolutely.
Because politics is interested in you.
That's a great line. Politics is interested in you. So let's start with you're the president of the Shooters Union. Now, are you the president of the Shooters Union Australia, Shooters Union Queensland, or are they one and the same?
I'm actually currently president of both.
Okay.
Shooters Union Queensland and Shooters Union Australia. And then we have other people in some of the other states. Some states we have properly formed local executives. Some states we run just from national office, which we run all the admin from national anyway. So, and Shooters Union was founded in Queensland, was founded out of Dalby. And I think I was about the 8th or 10th member to join. And then I was asked very politely by this sweet little lady who founded Shooters Union named Jan Lindsley, who she said, oh, Graham, you're a business guy. Maybe you can just step in president for a few months till we get started and you won't have to do anything. And I think that was 15, 18 years ago. So she obviously has a world-class ability to sell. Talk me into it, and I'm scared to leave because she'll beat me.
Or that you're susceptible to magic beans.
Well, there is that. There is that. It must have been for all of the glamour and the high pay. Oh, wait a minute. They don't pay. And really, I just get abused by anti-gunners. Well, I always just consider the source. If there's abuse in there, don't worry too much.
So yeah, now look, I was trying to look at my phone as I'm going, but we actually spoke to one of your legal guys recently about the knife laws, and I can't think of his.
Jamie Kovacs.
That's it.
Jamie.
Yeah, and I didn't want to not.
yes,
I didn't want to not mention his name, but it escaped me.
Yeah, Jamie, he's really good. He's great. He's a volunteer.
Yep.
And he does incredible work helping sort of triage all the legal cases. And he was right across that knife thing, which thankfully has been put back to bed.
Yes.
Thanks to our members. We were alerted by our members. We didn't realize, but we had 4 or 5 members who all were managers or owners of camping equipment stores. And within about a week, they were calling us up. And it turns out it came about, and for those outside Queensland, what happened was someone, probably about sergeant level on the Sunshine Coast Police, decided he reinterpreted what the rules were around folding knives, all on his own. And so he took upon himself to send out emails to Tent World and other that they couldn't sell all these knives. And so they're calling us up. And we went to the police minister's office, and we went to, and Weapons Branch said, nothing to do with us. It is technically, because it's in the Weapons Act, but they didn't know anything about it. They knew nothing. The inspector there says, what are you talking about? There's been no change. We showed him the email, and he went, I can't say what he said, but it was not a happy noise, put it this way. And there was an expletive deleted. And then we took to the minister's office, and they had pretty much the same reaction, and everyone went away, and that seemed to take a few months. And then they've come back and said, well, actually, there's no change in the interpretation. They had the legal part within Queensland Police look at it, and it's very clear when they're in there that a folding knife, to be classed as a category weapon under the Queensland Weapons Act, has to have been designed as a weapon, as well as being able to be opened with one hand. There's a two-part thing.
Okay. So it really comes down to
unless you buy a knife that's called the Grim Reaper, and it's got a spring and pops it out. Well, but it's really been hard on retailers. It's really unfair. And to be honest, Queensland has the most nonsensical knife laws now. I mean, someone called me today, a member, and they run a firearms business as well. She said she was in Coles and bought a box cutter and had to show ID, and you go, really, guys, this is
where we're at.
It's not as good as Victoria's machete bins, but we're trying.
Well, at least you know where to get the machete.
It was
from.
done under previous government, so I guess we'll leave it at that. It's not guns, I know, but it is big amongst people. Most people who are in the outdoors, be they in agriculture or hunting or whatever, use lots of knives.
So Graham, is that a recent change, the way that they're not interpreting that law? So the reason I ask is because I was the one who brought up the interpretation of the knife laws. So my wife works for a large retail outdoor store.
Oh, okay. So you were one of the people that brought it to us.
Yeah. So it was brought up. It was brought up on this podcast.
It was wild because we had a few within like a week or 10 days. I guess because they were all hearing.
And I actually have the knife that I used on the podcast to show it, because it is it's a folding knife. It's a hunting knife, but I can open it with one hand. Now, I'm aware that multiple retailers are no longer in Queensland going to be selling these knives because of that interpretation of the law. Now, are you saying that that's an incorrect interpretation?
Correct. In fact, we've said to them they need to start telling the retailers, but the email that I've got, they don't want us sharing. I'm happy privately to, I'll do something where I can show it to you, but it's quite clear in where it comes from.
Okay.
And yes, they can sell them, but they've been scared off, a lot of them, understandably. And that would be perfectly okay, so long as they couldn't claim it was also designed as a weapon. So if they go on the Cold Steel or whoever, and it's called, the Assassin's Blade, you've got a problem. If they go on and say, the hunter's friend, well, it doesn't meet the two-part thing. And that two-part thing's been in place for several years, and we worked, I think, 7 or 8 years ago on the same issue, along with the Firearm Dealers Association in Queensland, to make sure that was the case. And nothing's changed. And the present government, to be fair to them, was horrified. So I'm pretty impressed with the response from the government. I just don't believe that some people within the bureaucracy, police bureaucracy, want to send out emails saying we were wrong.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to
That's
know.
it, because
But
these kind of things
I'll
were
go through it
these.
so she can be happy with it. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
got them
that's
all
it.
around the place. We explained, and they're aware that probably 80% of the pocket knives sold in the last decade, in some form, if you try hard, you can
Yeah.
open with one hand.
Huh.
Funniest one was when Bob Catter
Yeah.
did something on YouTube, Facebook Shorts,
Yep.
something, and he was struggling to get out. But
That was through the cost of law,
they
I
asked,
believe.
they actually, the local police contacted his office and asked if they could bring the knife in, and they took the knife in, and the cop looked at it and just gave it back to him and said, "Yeah, have fun. No,
Yeah.
nothing to see here. I can fill out my report." They were very good about it. They had been pushed by someone in Brisbane to do that.
And the other, way back
So-
when, in 2022, we were invited to the hunting and shooting part of a bigger outdoor and camping show up at Toowoomba, and it was
Oh yes,
that's right.
we were
Well,
there.
it
I think
was
David,
unmitigated. It was an unmitigated
well,
disaster.
that's where I've
That's right.
seen you before too.
It was a
That's right.
disaster.
You had a booth near
Well,
David's.
It was this
Right.
very small room with everyone. Everyone was near everyone, and there was all these kind of. So we took over this kind of. There was supposedly like a conference presentation room where they were going to run all these talks, but absolutely no one turned up, and you weren't allowed firearms there.
Correct.
So it was kind of like a caravan show without caravans.
Yeah, I don't think we ever volunteered to go
No one
back.
did. But
I don't get
anyway,
that
we
sense,
met
yeah.
Graham Brown there, and we interviewed Graham. He was one of the David Brown. So
David.
yeah,
You did interview
yeah, that's
him.
right.
That's
It was
right.
one of
You
the very
did. That's
first
right.
ones we
That
did.
was your interviews.
Yeah.
That's right. It was
Excellent.
one of our first podcasts. We actually ended up doing everyone. We just said, "Do you want to be on something?" We just had chats with everyone.
He is, as we are recording this, he is speaking to an audience in Sydney at a function room in Parliament House, along with American gun researcher Professor John Lott, who wrote a book years ago called More Guns,
Oh
Less
yes,
Crime
I've seen that
in the
pop up.
US.
Yeah.
He's in Australia at the moment, and David and he are the two guest speakers at this event. I think it's the Libertarian Party in New South Wales is running it, and they invited David. He flew down this
I've seen the ads for that particular book and that presentation. So, what's the difference between, for those listening or watching and not sure, what's the difference between the Shooters Union and, let's say, SSAQ? What kind of association are you?
Well, a number of differences. Some would be in focus and some would be in setup. SSAA Queensland, as opposed to SSAA Inc., which is the national body, and you specifically said Queensland. The difference would be is we're a national body as well as state branches or state organisations, whereas SSAA Queensland is Queensland only. The second difference would be, I think it's fair to say, and I'm a SSAA member as well as Shooters Union, it's fair to say, and our founder is a life SSAA member, he used to be the Queensland Treasurer and Secretary. So their focus is more on running ranges and facilitating so people have places to shoot, things like that, which we need. They also get involved sometimes politically, but I would say our focus is the political side. That's hence the name. It's always been our focus, and we are not focused on a specific interest or discipline. We have, I believe the last time I looked, we have over 2,000 serving Queensland police officers as members. So we have everyone from police, security guards, agriculture, farmers. I mean, I'm a primary producer myself, but we have a lot of people there, and they don't have to join a group, but they join because of the advocacy work that we do, and collectors, rifle shooters, shotgun shooters, hunters, non-hunters. Our role is to represent and advocate for all legitimate firearm owners. And there's a myriad of uses for firearms, as you're aware. Some people use them for work. Some people use them for recreation. Some people use them to get food. Some people use them for all sorts of reasons. Some people collect them. We're there to stand up for any and all of those people. We don't care. And that was our focus from the day it started. And it remains our focus. And we want to improve the laws all the time. Spectacularly unsuccessful at getting rid of a lot of laws, but we've been pretty successful at stopping a lot of new stuff coming in. Sometimes we do feel like the little boy in the story that stuck his finger in the dike in Holland to stop the so as an example, what happened recently in Bondi, we had a crisis management plan prepared several years ago by a leading crisis management firm. And so we were able, within hours of the event, to turn to that the moment that the Prime Minister Albanese decided he would divert attention from terrorism and extremism and turn it to try and divert attention towards gun owners. Within minutes of that, we were starting to kick into action. And in the 6 weeks, I guess it's been since, roughly, I know we've reached over 5 million people around the country. We've increased our membership, which is nice, but it's not the way we want to do it. That's not our objective. We reached a lot of people and we put our members' money to work within 24 hours. We had a top group of marketing people working with us and we went to work. And I think within the first 30 days, we spent $350,000. And we are not the size organizations of, say, Listoway Queensland or others, but we just got in and we get in and we don't mind a scrap. And I think that's what our members want us to do. They want us to represent their interests. And every cent we get, we run it on the smell of an oily rag so that the money's there. I mean, we're a very low cost organization to join. I don't know what it is now, I think $50. It's cheap. With that, and people say you should raise it. No, we want people to be able to afford it. You know, that we're there. Not everyone's got heaps of bucks. You know, not everyone can afford to go to Africa hunting or whatever. And people, everyone deserves a voice. And I just think we're about giving them a fair go and standing up for them. And that's why we have a very close relationship with legal representatives in several states. And in every state in Australia, if someone wants to go to one of the tribunals, like in Queensland, it's QCAT, in New South Wales, it's NCAT. Oh, I forgot. In New South Wales now, there's no democracy where you have a right to appeal. Hopefully we'll get that back in 13 months at the next state election. But with the tribunals, we actually pay the filing fees for any of our members. Now, the filing fees in Queensland are $300 some. So that's a pretty good investment for someone. They can't join one day and we pay it the next. But we do it. We've currently, I think, got about 300 cases before QCAT. The solicitor we mostly use has already had about another 300 cases through, and he's managed to lose 2.
Needs to pack his game up.
So pretty good track record of appealing. We think people should be able to exercise their rights of appeal properly. And also, when you get people that you know it will fail, we talk them through that and say, mate, you don't have a hope. And some people, to be fair, probably shouldn't have a license. And that's okay. We talk them through that too and why. And that's where people like Jamie, who you talked to, Jono, about the knife issue, are very helpful. And we sort of triage that before it gets to the solicitor. The members get a free, quick consult with the solicitor. We do the same in New South and we've done the same in other states where needed. But those seem to be the 2 states probably where we've got the most members. And so where it occurs the most, the New South Wales situation is going to get very interesting because they can't stop you appealing to the Supreme Court. So it may backfire on them spectacularly, because I can tell you right now, we will be looking for good cases and we will be ready to fund them all the way to the Supreme Court with the good cases. And
can you
beat them with a stick.
Can you do class action at the Supreme Court level?
No, not really, because class actions in Australia, people like to say, oh, we'll do a class action about this, class action about that. And we have investigated with some of the class action firms and with lawyers, and technically the answer is yes, but in reality the answer is no, because for them to take it on, you've got to be able to show a specific financial loss. And that's extremely hard to do. Now, could there be scope for that under New South Wales? Likely not. Australians they watch a lot of American television and they start to actually think they've got rights. Whereas in Australia, if a state government or a federal government passed a law tomorrow that they would execute all left-handed babies, that would be legal. And people say, you could take it to court, and you go, well, unless if it's federal and it violates the Constitution, yeah, you could take it to the High Court. If it's state, that's why we couldn't stop some of the things in West Australia, because West Australia 18 months or 2 years ago, when they doxed all the gun owners and put pictures in the newspaper, which our Vice President David was able to identify individual addresses within 15 minutes out of that newspaper. And we sent an email to our West Australian members, and we had 4 of them within a day who confirmed that they were in that picture, their places. And it even had different colors for handguns and long arms. It was a wonderful shopping list for criminals. And so we went down the track and spent, I don't know, probably $8,000 or $10,000 with one of West Australia's best law firms. And the problem is West Australia doesn't have privacy legislation. And people jump up and down and say, well, the federal government does. Yeah, but it wasn't a federal matter. If the federal government had done it, they would have had a problem. To be honest, if the Queensland, New South Wales or Victorian governments had done it, there would have been a problem because they've all got privacy legislation that will prohibit it. But they didn't. And that's some of the challenges. And you'll see that now where a lot of people are jumping up and down, especially in New South Wales. Let's do legal action. Let's do legal action. That's a great idea if it's possible. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if it's possible. I know it's unlikely, but unlikely is not impossible. And so what's happening currently, you've got one law firm that had a big GoFundMe and got a lot of money, but you've also got the New South Wales, some of the New South Wales groups, including SSAA New South Wales and things that are working with a top senior counsel, SC or KC in Sydney. And they are, as we talk, probably they're reviewing the entirety of the New South Wales Act that was passed, because it's no longer a bill, it's an act. It's irrelevant how the bill was put together, because they put it all together. It doesn't matter now. It's an act and it's in force in different acts. But there is this very senior people looking at that, and I'm sure others are doing the same thing. I don't think it's just one. Maybe we'll get lucky and there is a way through. Maybe it's because of the appeal process, that taking that away might be an area, but there's very few areas that you can do it, unfortunately. I wish there were more. I'd love to see a class action. At some point, it may be possible if there's a lot of people have a financial loss that can be identified. That financial loss gives the class action lawyers the ability to make some money out of it, as well as put something in a claim. So it's far more complex than I can explain, but we have our former chairman who's a law professor. We've got a number of very good lawyers, magistrates, judges who are members. And so we have really good brains trust, I guess, that we can chat to privately. But then when you want official opinions, you pay money and you go get them. And we're looking at some of those right now, but there's others doing it in New South Wales. We'll certainly contribute to that. There was no need for people have said, why haven't you asked members for money? There's no need yet. If they come back and say, hey, yeah, there's a real genuine opportunity for a legal challenge to the High Court or something on it, hey, you're going to see us out there promoting, send some money, give it to whoever the legal people are doing it. But let's look at if there is a way legally forward. My own gut feeling, and that's all it is for anyone listening, is that, but it's based on a bit of experience, that the answer in New South Wales is political, and they have in some ways given shooters a gift by accident, because it's 13 months till their next state election from the time we're doing this podcast. And the regulations for New South Wales legislation have not even yet begun to be written. Therefore, it's going to take at least, say, until maybe Easter to write them. Could be longer. So nothing happens until then. No one's losing any guns. And we've had hundreds, but even now we're probably getting a half dozen a day. What do I do? What do I do? How do I get rid of this? Yeah. And I understand the panic.
Sure.
There was a very good post on Facebook by a guy that does YouTube. He's got great YouTube, Edge of the Outback.
Yep.
Hunting feral hunting one. Excellent. And we actually reposted it because he was so level-headed in it about, hey, chill guys, it's going to take months for regulation and all this. So let's say it takes them 3 or 4 months for regulations to be written. Then if they're going to do some sort of buyback, which is a ridiculous term because it's confiscation with
Compensation.
I come to your house and take your television, even though you tell me you don't want to sell it to me, and leave you $1,000 on the
That's
shelf.
loss.
It's still
compensation
theft.
by its very nature means that you suffer a loss. That's what you get compensation for. So
Yes,
you are losing something,
correct.
no matter how they dress it up.
And state law does not have to compensate you, but federal law does, and that's why you're hearing this back and forth about a 50-50 buy-in, because the Prime Minister's hoping, someone has advised him that by doing that, yes, there's a money factor, but the other factor is that they won't have to abide by the same rules. A federal buyback, federal compensation has to be done at fair market value, which is usually retail, and they would have to buy back loading presses, ammunition, gun bags, everything, and they're desperate not to do that. CIFA has done the numbers and believes it's between, if it was nationwide and they did it under the same rules as 96, it would be between 10 and $16 billion. This is why most states aren't very keen, even Labor states, on it. So it's an interesting period, but there would be nothing to stop New South Wales in the regulations. It could be difficult, but I think in the regulations, they could probably say, hey, if you had more than 10 or whatever, you could keep them. But so many people have worked out, well, I'm just going to change my category of license and then increase the numbers and family members getting licenses. In the 2 or 3 days between, no, it'd be a week, sorry, or so, between the Bondi terrorism event and New South Wales saying they were going to change everything. And that's when they shut down the online applications for licenses.
Yeah.
They had 14,000 applications. So what's going to come out of this is a massive increase in the number of firearms licenses in Australia, which there's a real positive in that, because every firearms license, whether they own a gun or not, politicians look at that and say that's
something that Tom has.
If we get 500,000 licenses in Queensland, they're going to listen a lot harder than they are with 230,000 licenses.
And that's what Tom talks about getting us to 5%. Once you get to a 5% as a population, you've got
Yep. In Queensland, it is currently 6.7% of the voting population has a firearms license. Now, if you then calculate, because they always say, oh, it's only so many percent, but they don't count. It's not everyone, because there's children and non-residents who don't vote, right? Of the number of voters in Queensland, because firearm owners represent 6.7% or 6.4, sorry, I can't remember. But if you take that and then you assume that each one of those people has 2 family members close enough that their vote may well be influenced by what happens to that person, feeling aggrieved because they've been treated badly by a government, you've got, 17, 18% of voters in Queensland. Now, in other states, it might be a bit less, but it would not take much to get most states over 5%. Of voting population. And that's what Tom is exactly right. Once you get over 5 to 7% of voters, political advisors take note in a big way. And I know a lot of shooters love to say, it doesn't matter what you do. You write a letter and nothing happens. Oh, I wrote a letter once and they didn't listen to me. Yeah, well, grow up, put your big boy pants on and get over it. A politician gets 100 letters. I don't care the response they send out. It could sound terrible. Whatever, don't worry about what they're saying. They're acting. They're looking at this and going, crap. And we know that in the last 6 weeks around the country, there's been tens of thousands of letters. We know it just from our own member base. Queensland members alone, I think I know of, just tracking some of the stats when they used our facilities to send letters to pollies, and that I think it was 7 or 8. I sent
one last Friday. I'm sending another. I sent them on Fridays. I'm going to send another one.
Yeah. Well, we've got next week. We've got Queensland government is putting up its amendments to the Queensland Weapons Act, and So I'll be over at Parliament on Tuesday the 10th of Feb is when they're doing it. If anyone's bored with their life and wants to go sit in Parliament that day, if they send our office an email closer to the day, like on something, we can probably give them an approximate time of day.
Look,
There are
I
people out there
myself
that
would,
regard that as,
if I wasn't going to go chase red deer, I'd probably go.
yeah.
I'm keen to go. I'll
You
be
know
in the
what I'd
cities.
love to do? Chase red deer. You know, look, we'd all rather, in a lot of ways, we'd all rather just be at a range shooting or out in the bush chasing, wildlife around. But the reality is, like I said earlier, you may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. The mere act of owning a firearm in Australia, regardless of what you own it for, is a political act. You might want to deny that, but you can deny it all you want. The sun's going to come up in the east tomorrow and it's going to go down in the west. And politics is interested in you. You've only got to look what happened after Bondi. How quickly, within hours, did a politician, a government who has encouraged rampant immigration from countries with radically different cultures to ours into the country, has allowed protests, has allowed anti-Semitism to bloom, and then puts their hands in the air and is shocked this occurs. And instead of saying, my goodness, we should do a better job, let's go after terrorism, let's go after extremism, that's not the Australian way to have those things in our country. No, they didn't do that. Within 2 hours, they said, let's attack the most law-abiding sector of the Australian population, that 1.2 million people or whatever it is that legally own firearms. Let's attack them because they're easy. How disgusting. And every firearms owner in Australia should be deeply offended that you got a government and a prime minister that equates you as almost being a bloody terrorist. Yeah, it's every second we are talking about this rather than hunting or something else. We should be addressing terrorism and extremism in this country, and every aspect of government and the community should be addressing that, not talking about, should we have 4 guns or 5 guns? I mean, really. There's zero evidence, any jurisdiction in the world, that the number of guns makes a difference. And to say people in the city shouldn't have as many guns. You know what the difference between the city and the country is? 30 minutes in a motor vehicle. I said to a politician the other day, I said, you know what a car is? And they went, yeah. And I said, well, they're a great invention and people get in them, put their guns in them and drive out in the bush. I mean, seriously? What, you shouldn't be able to? What's the difference? These are law-abiding people. And the people that usually have really large numbers are collectors, and they have incredibly stringent storage requirements. They're effectively running a private museum. And I'm sure you both know collectors, and they're basically nerds that like guns.
Yep, pretty much.
Look at this. Scrap happened there. And that's wonderful. But they got a right to do that. Right? They've gone through all the hoops. They've done everything they should. And how dare they come out?
I'm not particularly happy about being calling a nerd.
Look at that.
I'm still processing that, but
I really wasn't meaning that as an insult. It's more like a friendly jibe.
Here's the gun. If you look at its handle, it even says the gun dude.
Yeah,
so
elated. But it's just people have different interests with it. Why on earth would you attack that? And I would have to say that the Queensland Premier has, in his public statements since that until now, has consistently said we need to address extremism, terrorism, anti-Semitism, not attack law-abiding firearm owners. And so next week, when some amendments do go up, we are pretty hopeful that they are going to be focusing on criminal misuse of firearms and extremism. We've been lobbying for over a decade in Queensland in particular. We have lobbied in other states at the same thing, but in Queensland in particular, for a significant increase in penalties for people who steal firearms or knowingly receive stolen firearms. And so I'm hopeful that they include that because they've been talking about that sort of area, addressing things like that. We're pretty sure that there's not going to be any limits or any changes to types of classifications of firearms in Queensland. And I think you're going to see exactly the same in Northern Territory. And most likely you'll see the same thing in Tasmania, which, Anthony, I've never liked the National Firearms Agreement that they did in 96. Well, Anthony Albanese just pretty much got rid of that for us because he's got the states fighting about it for the first time in 30 years. Oh. So sometimes they say in war, you get these collateral damage. Well, there's a lot of collateral damage in this that the
sorry.
anti-gunners really haven't figured out yet. They've been complaining for years about the gun lobby. The news is pretty disappointing. There really wasn't a gun lobby. Guess what? There is now. Thank you. Because so many people have disagreed with the way governments around the country have gone about this. We monitor different politicians' Facebook accounts for the reactions they get to certain things. And for example, the Queensland Premier normally will get somewhere around 2,000 likes when he has a post on his Facebook. You know, it's his official one. I don't mean if he's got a family one, it's official one. When he announced that Queensland would not be participating in the federal buyback and things like that, there was 38,000 likes. We cannot find a negative comment in amongst the thousands of comments. The pub test this time round didn't work. It wasn't like when Howard did it in 96. This time round, even people that don't like guns, don't like hunting, have gone, yeah, I don't care if you ban them all, but this has got nothing to do with that. You know, people aren't that thick that they can't see through the disgraceful diversion when even Australia's most noted anti-gunner, John Howard, comes out and says this. He called it a disgraceful distraction. For the first time in 30 years, I'm agreeing with John Howard. I didn't think that was going to happen, but he's right. You know, but he was right. And because it's a very different situation for a start, and whilst there's probably plenty of Australians that would say, oh, I don't, it's fine if they do some more stuff to gun. Not one of them, I don't think, thinks that will affect the issue around Bondi. And I think that's come home. And I think the Queensland government and the Premier has been very clear on that they want to address that. So we don't have all the details, obviously. It will be in Parliament on Tuesday, and they're not rushing it through. It'll be the normal process. They will bring it up in Parliament on Tuesday. It will then go to a committee process, which will have submissions, and people will have 4 or 5 weeks, not days, to put in submissions in an orderly fashion. I'm not sure whether they have hearings or they won't, they've assured us that they will be listening to different points of view at that time. And I'm sure the anti-gun extremists will bounce up and down and cry false tears and say how it's undermining this and undermining that. Well, the only thing undermining is them, because go to one of their web pages and look at their 10 points. And the first one is ban hunting. Australia bans hunting. I'm in primary production. I can tell you, and I'm on a biosecurity committee and some of the national feral pig things. Queensland alone has hundreds of millions of dollars a year in lost revenue through feral animal. I don't mean kangaroos. I mean feral animal damage, which is huge, apart from the environmental damage to that. Just the economic loss, and the environmental loss is harder to pick. On what planet is it a good idea to discourage people from going out and voluntarily helping to decrease that problem? In most rural areas, most of us who have properties, we're buggered by the end of the day, to go out, and a lot of property holders like me are older, and to go out after you've been out all day and then put on a thermal or a spotlight and go out there for 2 or 3 hours in the middle of the night loses its appeal at some point.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, a lot of primary producers have also been, I guess, pushed into the belief, and it's not an accurate one, but that, I leave the gun in the safe. And then they see something up the paddock an hour away and they've got to come back and it's not there. And so things don't get killed. They should be carrying them with them all the time when they're on their property, but they don't like having to put them in and out of safes and everything. I get that. But a lot of that feral animal control is done by hunters. If you took a lot of the hunters out of the picture, you would have a really serious, we got a serious problem now, but with feral animal damage. But, and I know that's probably a little off the subject of recreational, but it is recreational. I'm thrilled when someone, friends of ours come out and they get 2 or 3 pigs and stuff like that. They have a great time. They're responsible. They're safe. And they do me a favor.
Absolutely.
What a wonderful situation. They probably burn through hundreds of dollars of fuel and ammo and thousands of dollars of guns and 4-wheel drives. And they have a great time camping at the creek and everything else. Everyone's happy. I mean, that seems like a good solution. Oh no, we'll discourage that behavior. Hunting should be celebrated in Australia. in the way it is in other countries. And I do think there's a lot of room in Queensland for us to work with this government going forward, not so much on the firearm, but there is on the firearm front, but also on the hunting front, because we don't have that access to public land that is available in the other eastern states, both New South Wales and Victoria. They both have different systems, but they both work. And so there's no reason that Queensland couldn't adopt some sort of similar program looking at the best of those two programs and have something. And I think it would be very helpful. And it would also probably give more protection from liability to primary producers who allow people on their place, because there's increasing resistance amongst the primary producer community because they're scared of, someone hurts himself or something. And so legal clarification could really help that. And I think that's an area which is not specifically firearms, but it is a big interest of
we've made
the majority of our
this
members.
podcast,
Certainly
the whole
percentage of it.
essence of what we do is about getting people hunting. And so the reality is that we're public land advocates but oddly enough, we're public land advocates for New South Wales.
Yes.
And we have helped myriad people become successful hunters in New South Wales. So the idea of public land hunting or a shared private public land accessing, whatever it looks like, no, it's not.
Yeah. I don't think any of
The
us
flow-on
are really
effect.
pedantic how it looks in the end, as long as there's a public land aspect and there's a way that encourages or protects private landholders to participate in this, because it's good for everyone.
I think that's very important. Is that private, that allowing hunters on private, because in Queensland, as you know, we don't have public land hunting. And as what you said, there's a number of primary producers who now don't want to allow hunters on their property because they are scared someone's going to hurt themselves, someone's going to roll their four-wheel drive or something like that.
And it's an unclear situation,
correct,
legally.
Yeah,
and it wouldn't take much to clarify it. And there are some good people working on that. And I know right now there's work being done within natural resources or whatever on potential changes. It's at very early stages, but people are talking, and there are some very knowledgeable people working on it. And I think we also have some people in Queensland government now, ministers, who understand that issue and understand that this is a cost-effective way to assist feral animal management. And at the same time, it helps regional communities. You get a small community, I forget the name of it, but there's Gympie does one, but there's one up in North Queensland where they have a competition.
Yeah, the big competition.
They get 800. They look like a pile. I mean, it's an inner city greenie's nightmare, because there's this pile of big dead pigs, and they went, that brings in so much money to those towns. It's like in New Zealand on the South Island, they have a bunny hunting competition. And in this little town, they reckon in 1 week it brings over $5 million in to this little town, a few hundred people. And they kill something, I forget, 20,000 rabbits or something. It's huge. Of course, they got all their Ruger 1022s
Look,
with
Graham,
sound moderators on them.
Sorry, John.
So they get a few more than we do.
But it's just, I was just going to say, and we talk about, feral animal control, but there's even economic benefit, but there's the benefit of we're not even allowed to donate the meat from deer that we shoot to charities. Where in New Zealand they do, you can take it to your butcher, they can process it, they can donate it. There's food banks, there's all sorts of things. There's so many homeless people, there's so many people doing it rough at the moment. We can't give them, the proceeds of animals that we shoot.
It is ridiculous. In Tasmania, our Tasmanian president has been working with One Nation and one of the other parties down there to get a bill presented to allow that to occur. And Tasmania probably has a bit more hunting culture than, say, Queensland. And so that people are actually, it hasn't happened and it may not, but people are at least listening now. And they're listening, Jono, on that exact thing that you said. People are struggling. We're in a time where there's plenty of people doing it tough. And if we can help them, that's a great thing. It's good, clean protein source. It actually tastes good. But it's a good, clean protein source. It's healthy. Everything else. And it just makes sense. But like so many things that make sense, unfortunately, Australia as a whole does not manage its wildlife. It either kills them all or protects them all, neither of which is management. Whereas you go across the ditch to our New Zealand mates and they manage their wildlife pretty darn well. We go over to Canada, they manage it pretty darn well. We go to the United States, a very difficult situation when you've got 350 million people, and they manage it extremely well. And Australians think, oh, America, no gun laws, no this. They're far stricter on hunting than we are.
You go to jail, you'll go to jail
the tag
for
system and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
Very, very well organized. Oh, yeah. There is currently an Australian in jail in Wyoming for poaching. And Wyoming's Game and Wildlife says that one of the worst groups they find is Australians. Yeah. Because they don't get that people there, the general population there protects their hunting rules because they understand that it's protecting the herds, it's doing this, it's doing that. Now, they're not dealing with, generally speaking, with a feral animal problem, except in perhaps the southern states with pigs. But normally, most of their animals aren't feral. So I get that it's a little bit different, but there's no reason why, whether it's the red deer behind your head or other things, can't be effectively managed. I mean, as a private landholder, if I think something's a pest, I want the right to get rid of it, and I don't want government interference. However, I also want the right to let Jono come and chase a trophy if I so choose as a private landholder. And I think both are important because it's an argument we see amongst our members a lot with deer especially. Deer are a game animal. The other side goes, no, deer are a feral animal. Both are actually true. And it depends where you are on the spectrum, but there is putting an economic benefit on animals, which clarifying the laws in Queensland in particular would help create an incentive to manage wildlife rather than either just mindlessly protect every one of them or mindlessly kill every one of them by bringing in choppers or whatever. And there's good reasons to bring in choppers sometimes, but I'd hate to see it on things like deer and other things. But I also get the economic reality. If I'm running a property and I got a real problem and they're eating the grass that my cows are going to eat, it doesn't turn into a sporting problem at that point. So I do think clarifying the hunting laws in Queensland, as well as public land access, is important. And I'm hoping that different groups work together to do that over the coming term of
it's directly related.
Government. That's not really gun laws. Sorry,
it is, and it's directly related to gun laws. That's what it is.
It is B for politics.
Exactly. It's all related.
It's very much because I've had people say, I actually had one hunting group say, we're not interested because we're a hunting group, not a gun group. I said, well, how are you going to go pointing your finger out? I'm sometimes undiplomatic. Forgive me if I run a bit undiplomatic at times, but people need firearms to do it. It's kind of like in South Australia when they passed a bow hunting ban. We contacted some archery groups there before and said, this is coming. Is there anything we can do? Even though we're firearms oriented, we feel as a interrelationship. You know what they said? No, it won't happen. Don't worry. Won't affect us. After it's already through. Why didn't you tell us? Well, some people you can't help. And you really got, and I get it. People think, but I'm not the bad guy, because we're not the bad guys. But we've got people out there that want to destroy your heritage, your culture, your way of life, your lifestyle. They are against it. They want to take away the firearms. They hate people that own firearms. They hate people that like firearms, and they want to get rid of them. And they don't like people that hunt. Because, oh my goodness, who would need to do that? The same people be horrified. They come out here when we're slaughtering a steer for meat for the next 9 months. Guess how we slaughter it? The mobile butcher comes out with a gun and shoots a 600 to 800 kilo steer behind the ear with a 22 standard velocity from about 10 yards, and it falls over and doesn't even quiver. It's the most boring thing in a way. It's not dramatic at all because he's done it 10,000 times. He knows exactly where to hit it, just sits there, and it's in the yard with its mates, eating a bit of hay, falls over, they keep eating. We shoo them out of the yard and cut it up. People probably should understand a little bit where their food comes from sometimes. I think we've got to do a better job educating people about hunting. sometimes, but hunting's a hard thing to explain to people who've never done it, because it's probably a little bit different for everyone, but there's a emotional aspect to it. There's the satisfaction, there's other things, but there's also a sadness. You know, when you took that red deer behind you, John, I bet there was a moment in there of,
Oh yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
contemplation and everything. I know recently when I got a really nice chittle that up in central North Queensland, there really is. You're like, wow, that's such a beautiful animal. Half hour later, I'm showing it to the landholder, and the guy, I've never seen a guy so grateful. Why was he so grateful? Because that deer in that area, which is near big mining camps, was widely known, and he's had a massive problem with poaching.
Oh, okay.
So the first thing he did is took a picture, and he went and posted it up and said, it's gone. Because he's got 24 fences cut. He's had people threaten him, all sorts of things, and they've all been looking for that
One stag.
trophy. So he was so grateful. He said, I was at the point where I was just going to get the choppers in and kill all of them. And there's probably 500 chittle on his place. It's a big property. We're talking 50,000 acres, but there'd be at least 500. I would have seen 200 when just driving around. I saw, and as a fellow primatist, I saw how relieved he was. He was worried about his family. He was worried about the type of people that were doing these things on his property. And to have that reduced was a huge relief to him. He doesn't want to kill them all. He doesn't mind having a few running around. They're a beautiful animal. But he minds when people are coming in, cutting fences, running dogs through and everything else.
You will get no argument from us about the economic value. The economic value of public land hunting. I mean,
anyway,
we've been parts of the focus groups. You know, as they say, you know, deer is the most expensive free meat there is. You know, it works out about $600 a kilo or something like that.
Yeah.
When you do the real, if you're honest and do the real calculation, and as you said, there is no reason why, you know, there is no other part in this country where volunteers are not, you know, encouraged. You know, there's no one going around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, celebrating volunteers.
Yeah.
Probably
and,
more
you know,
than most
we've got
countries.
the experts saying, you know,
in one area.
You know, we're not really against recreational hunting, but we don't think it does any benefit. Well, imagine going to the men's shed and saying, look, you know, you're not part of a, you know, nationwide engagement program, so you might as well just roll down the doors and go home. There is no way you would do that except for when it comes to hunting. There's nowhere you would say you're a volunteer group, but we don't think you do much chop. So, you know, just, well, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, I would say it's wider than hunting. It's just firearms, because you think, especially in smaller communities, but also in the cities, clay target clubs and pistol clubs and things are really a community event. I know Warwick in southeast Queensland's not too far from me, and it's got a number of great ranges, and they're real community activity. Local businesses donate prizes and do this and everything else. It's a part of the community.
Yep.
And a lot of people, that's their social interaction. A big part of it. They, you know, maybe they're a bit old to play footy, and people don't realize that there's more people every weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Recreationally shooting guns than playing golf. And you say that, that's not true. And it's way more. It's more people than play football every weekend. And they go, no. And you go, it actually is. And it has an incredible safety record. There's nothing to come close to matching it as far as its safety. And you think, we should be celebrating this, not harassing them and then trying to mealy-mouth say, what we just passed won't, you know, like the lies that are being fed out there by some Labor politicians right now federally, who said, oh, it won't matter, it won't affect this, and now it obviously will. And they go, oh, no, you don't understand and all this. And they say, I don't have to understand the detail. I understand that you're equating me to a bloody terrorist and I don't like it. It's disrespectful.
Yeah, I mean,
it's obscene,
unfortunately,
in fact, to do that to fellow Australians. And we're not gonna cop it. And I don't think a lot of Australians are gonna cop it. So that's why they have a voting booth. And South Australia, there's a mass thing at the moment. They got an election in 3 months. I think One Nation's now got 47 seats they're going to run in. I don't know they'll win lower house seats, but I wouldn't be surprised they're in 2 or 3 upper house seats. And we've got several of our members already who are actually running. And I think that's healthy. We encourage political, not with one particular party, but we encourage people to get involved politically. And in this case, our nation's got a pretty decent gun policy. And in South Australia, there's not much National Party presence, unlike Victoria or New South Wales or Queensland LNP. So, yeah, people get involved and push back, because the only reason these things get out of hand is no one says anything. If you keep saying stuff, yes, it's frustrating, but show me a business out there that anyone started that didn't have a lot of grief and obstacles. And you have the same ones with politics and things. But if you go along and you meet your local politician and you talk to them and things like that, I mean, if they're a complete ass, then take some of your time and money and find someone else you like and support them. Go to the voting booths and help and hand out things and be part of the solution. But if they're reasonable and they'll talk to you, explain, get them along to your gun club, get them along to a barbie somewhere, whatever, take them out hunting. But whatever you can do, I think the more exposure people get to firearms sports and collecting and things like that, if someone's a big collector, take them in and show them their collection. I know in Brisbane, we've taken a number of politicians into Cleaver's Firearms, which inside there, if someone's listening and they're not from Queensland, they've been in there. If you're visiting Brisbane and you're interested in antique Colts, go out there and see if you can have a look in the largest collection of antique Colt revolvers in the Southern Hemisphere, and probably one of the largest 4 or 5 collections in the world is right there. Now, we've taken numerous politicians out there and showed them that. Why? People say, why? I said, because they start to get a feel and they hold something in their hand and you say, well, this was Ned Kelly's youngest sister's gun. She carried it in a purse till 1921 when she died. Oh, and this one was a Colt Walker that it's probably worth $750,000 you're holding. And they go, and things like that. It really opens them up. And we'll take politicians to gun businesses, like in Queensland. We might make an arrangement with a new politician. We can take them out and show them through one of the facilities, NIA or someone else, and they start to see, well, this is a real industry. It's a professional industry. It's a highly regulated industry. And in other parts, we might get them to go through Beretta or Winchester or some, and they see in different states, wow, this is a real industry. It's a professionally run, highly regulated industry that is very effective, generates jobs, generates everything else, and has an incredible safety record. We always like to say, if Australia had a firearms problem, you'd know about it. You'd know about it very quickly.
That's one of the problems. Like, for instance, Queensland Labor have employed some, I don't know, marketing guru who's come up with this idea. What is it? You can't be tough on crime if you're soft on guns. So that's it. And no one sells. Does that imply that if you've got guns, you're a criminal? Yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing at the polling booth.
Yes, it does. Exactly what it implies. It's so thick they haven't figured it out. I have a letter that was written to us by Cameron Dick, who was then at the time, I think, Deputy Premier, just before the last state election. In it, he pledges Labor will not introduce any new gun laws in the next term of Parliament, of government, and we will give you suppressors. And he signed it. And we worked with the Labor government under various police ministers for more than a decade that they were in. And whilst we didn't always agree, we had a productive working relationship. And I have some respect for the former police minister, Mark Ryan. I didn't agree with him on some things, a lot of it, but and that's okay. We could disagree and argue respectfully, but then they come along and they've thrown that all out the window with a disgraceful attack on Queensland firearm owners, which was really sort of a cheap thrills in politics. And I don't know who advised them to do it, but the letters we've seen from Queensland Labor politicians sent out to our members who queried or complained about that, and a number of them are Labor voters. Most in the regional areas, any Labor members there have backed away from that whole soft on guns, tough on crime or whatever, thing. And yet I heard of one today. I'm waiting to get a copy of the email where the only response they got back, allegedly from Stephen Miles himself's office, wouldn't be him writing it, but his office, was simply a one-liner that said, if that's the hill you want your vote to die on, so be it. And I've said to the member, send me the email. And you'll see it on Facebook if we get it. So I don't get it. They're really consigning themselves to a certain element, and they're going to find a number of their voters are going to move, whether they move from Labor to the LNP or whether they move from Labor to KAP and he runs in, or whether they move to One Nation. They'll move because they're not very satisfied at the moment. And you've only got to look what's happening nationally with the Libs who've effectively been Labor light and how people are abandoning them. And the National Party, first time in 30 years, has just gone away from them on the gun issue completely. And I've got to say, as a kid that grew up with National Party people running in and out of our house, I've been very gratified to see them start returning to their roots where they actually represent regional Australia and stop trying to keep the latte sippers happy.
Who of us like to sip?
Apologies to those that like latte.
Graham, look, being
That's
mindful
why
of
they
time,
invented good bourbon, wasn't it?
Your advice for those listening, what should they do? Let's talk about gun laws. What might they do about gun laws?
About what in particular? And I'll get and gun laws, be they federal or state, and the federal ones largely don't affect you on a day-to-day as much, but they're still important because of the terrible changes they've made recently. But basically, you need to be in contact with politicians. You need to tell them what you think. And we find that a lot of people are afraid to write to a politician, not because they're scared of the politician. They're scared of they don't know what to say. And we'll constantly get people saying, oh, give us a template. And we try and explain, if you do a template, they see 2 or 3 or 5 of those and they're all the same. They don't pay much attention. Even if you write in a thumbnail dipped in tar, dear member, I'm very disappointed to see your party or you supporting this. If you vote for this, I will never vote for you again and I will campaign against you. Or, dear member, please support this. And I really appreciate it. And as someone who voted for you in the past, I'll be looking forward to supporting you in the next election. It doesn't have to be a lot longer than that. People think they've got to write a official submission on the gun laws, and they don't. They really don't. They might pick a couple of points, and we usually have material on our website that they can find that. And if they can't find it, just contact our office and they'll direct them to a link or something. But you don't want an actual template. The other thing is try and go and see them. And if you're in a club, get the club to invite them down to the next shoot. If you're going to present some prizes, ask them to come present the prizes. Do that. The former police minister in Queensland, Mark Ryan, Labor police, he was patron of his local pistol club.
That letter writing and
he went and shot.
Obviously, this is a question. I kind of know the answer, but I really want you to talk about it. I think too many people worry that when they write the letter, they have to present the argument. And what you're saying is just tell them what you think. You don't have to be winning the case. You just have to say, this is going to hurt me, or this is it. That's opinion.
Right. Yeah. And let them make the case if they want to. It's not your job to outline that. As an organisation, we do submissions for everything. We've done submission for the Victorian one. We've done submissions every time they do something in Queensland. We'll do one next week. Once we have this bill in hand and our legal guys review it, we will have a submission in. And it may be that we like a lot of it. And we'll say that in the submission, and then we'll say other parts we don't like. You don't have to do that as an individual. You're just doing a letter to a politician that, as you said, say, this will negatively affect me. My family and I like to go hunting and you're affecting it. Or my family and I enjoy going out in the bush shooting tin cans. And you're trying to equate me with a criminal and I don't appreciate it. Or, Premier, I really appreciate you standing up and saying this is not about guns, this is about extremism and terrorism. When a politician does something good, write them a letter, because they hardly ever get a letter about something good. People only write to them to complain. They love getting letters that tell them they did a good job on something, because when's the last time anyone thinks a politician did a good job? You give them credit where it's due. There are some decent people in politics, and it's unfortunate that a lot of them, their staff, will do automated responses. That's the same response you get no matter what you write. And people get that response back, and they quite understandably go, letters don't make a difference or emails don't make a difference. They do make a difference. They really, really do. Talk to anyone. I mean, you had Tom Kenyon on. He's a former parliamentarian. If you ever get Nigel Scullion on from the Northern Territory, he's a former federal cabinet member. They will all say the same thing. They listen all right. You get one letter, you don't listen much. You get 100, you start listening. You get 1,000, oh my goodness. Why has there been such scuttling around within Labor federally after they passed that recent laws? Because they're getting kicked in the teeth in their electorates, because so many people are upset about it, because they don't see why they were picked on, which is a very good question. But you don't have to be Shakespeare. And if you do have a template or something, run it through ChatGPT and just say, here, ChatGPT, please make this sound a bit different. We've got this instant helper now. And if you don't know how to use ChatGPT,
but not
like
Copilot, not Copilot. Copilot won't do it. Copilot won't do it.
I use it every day. Use it every day.
Honestly, and all the politicians' addresses are publicly listed, email addresses and things. And you'll find quite a few of them are quite comfortable to sit down and talk to you and stuff like that. And you don't have to agree with them all the time. I've sat down with people from the Greens Department. I worked quite closely for a little bit a year or so ago when they did the Community Safety Bill in Queensland with the Greens, who disagree with us a lot on hunting and stuff, and on firearms ownership. But they happen to agree on a couple of things in that bill with us. So we just said, okay, we agree on that. And they were professional and we worked together, and they were fine to do that. Now, we did a survey and we found out something like 11% of our members were likely to vote for Greens. Yes. Because we have a lot of members who are genuine environmentalists, because they go out and destroy feral cats and other ferals, and they see that as environmental. And they're not a trendy, sipping type. Yes. I mean, already in trouble for picking on sipping. But yeah, I think that's important. I think it's important to take people out shooting. If you've got friends, relatives, take them out shooting. Take them to the range with you. Take them out, and expose them to it. Even if if you're going hunting and they're not going to shoot because of either rules or their own feelings, that's fine. Take them out, they have a good time, they get out in the bush, and, you might cook up a rabbit or whatever it is and catch a fish, do other things while you're there, and people have a great time. They go, hey, that's pretty good.
It's a whole lifestyle. Yeah.
You take people to a gun range. I can remember when we took, I better not say some of the names, but some of the politicians we've taken to ranges who've never picked up a gun. And if we could take photos and put them up on Facebook of the huge grin they get when they hit a target, they're like a little kid, and it's like, wow. One female politician, she was so excited to just shot with a handgun. She hit the target for the first time and she just spins around right behind her, which is not unusual with new pistol shoots. And she was so excited. Look what I do. And as she's come around, I had to.
Yeah. Everyone else is hitting the floor.
Yeah, before everyone's on the floor. But she was so excited. Now, this is a person, they're in responsible positions and everything else, but they're like you and I. I mean, they enjoy things. There's a reason guns are popular, because apart from being tools to farmers or law enforcement, they are also recreational items. Well, just like motor vehicles. Motor vehicle could be a tool. Motor vehicle can be a recreational item. And so can firearms. And when you show that to people, they get it. I was talking to the leader of the New South Wales National Party, amazing guy, Gurmesh Singh, great guy. Talked to him before the New South Wales laws and what the Nats were doing, and then during it and after. He took a very level-headed approach. The Nats, under difficult circumstances, completely opposed it, and I've got to give him a lot of credit. But he was telling me about a relative of his that had a certain number of guns, way more than what their new limit is. And he said, I went and had a look, and the relative explained to him what each gun was for. He said, I understand why he's got every gun and there's no reason he shouldn't have. And I said, exactly. And it's explaining it to people sometimes, when you explain the history. I had someone the other day and they were looking at they asked me about some old military rifles, and I had a Swiss one and a German one and a British one and some others. And they were they were absolutely fascinated by the history and how they worked and everything else. And this is not a person that's ever fired a gun, but they found it really fascinating. And I think just in doing that, sharing your passion, and people see your passion, don't be that grumpy little shooter that, I don't talk about it. But share your passion. Be proud of being a firearms owner. If people don't like it, that's their problem. We have some of our kids that when they're up at the farm and they have friends that don't shoot, they just don't come near the range.
That's right.
That's okay. We're not going to force them to shoot, but you know what? Most of them, they love it.
Kids absolutely love it. I mean, I've got my 10-year-old. He went on his first hunt with me at the end of last year, and he loves it. When can I get my license?
My boy
still get my license next year.
License?
Mark, you're going through the same journey with yours.
That's right. Queensland is 11 or something. Yeah. So, it is. It's a great thing. But exposing people, writing letters, meeting the politicians, exposing others to shooting, doing those sort of things, supporting organisations. Join. I'm only a member of my local whatever club, pistol club, Claytake, pick the one, or a hunting association. Join other shooting organisations. Join Shooters Union. Join SSAA. Join whatever one. You can be a member of more than one. I think I'm a member of 7 or 8. I think I'm a member of 4 or 5 pistol clubs. It just seems to add up. And it's wonderful because you're helping support all that infrastructure. If you're upset about things and you don't know, but you don't know what to do, if organization you like, if they've got a legal fund or something you can donate to that they're doing politically, we didn't really do any fundraising over the last 6 weeks or so. To be honest, we were so flat out campaigning, and we were spending money hand over fist. But you know what? We had so many members that were just sending donations. The office would call up and say, look, today we got a half dozen people donated $1,000 each. And you know what else we've had? We've had a whole bunch of pensioners and things who send us $5 and $10 a week. We didn't ask them. We've got one guy who's been doing that for 10 years, $5 a week. Now that's a big deal to that guy.
Shows you how much it means. Shows you how much it means to him.
That touches me much more than someone with heaps of money to throw around. It's kind of like that old biblical story about the woman in the synagogue that's giving pennies versus the rich guy giving lots. Those pennies to her were critical. And it's kind of like that. And we see that with a lot of our members, and we take that trust very seriously. All the board takes it very seriously. It really is a trust that we use that money effectively. It's there to fight for their rights, and that's our job to do that. Do we do everything perfectly? No, we do not. We screw up every other minute probably, but we try our best, and we work with people, and we try and look after their interests, and we don't give up on it, and we're not giving up on this. We see New South Wales a huge thing to be able to turn that around. If we can turn that Minns government into a one-term government, that's going to send a message to politicians around this country that they won't want to try this crap again for a generation.
I think that's a good place to put the full stop. Give them something to think for a whole generation. Graham, thank you very much, mate. You've made this quite an easy.
Yeah, agreed.
No, it's good. I was going to say you made it a very easy podcast to run.
Sorry, I ramble on too much.
That's fantastic. Excellent.
Yeah, because you'll be able to say he never shuts up.
He's got it out.
You don't have to say anything. You just put him on his. Well, yeah, there's a lot in it, and I am passionate about it. But so is David. You've met David. So's Jamie. So's the people involved. And we're not trying to be a big organisation. We're just trying to have a go and say it's about time.
I reckon I've got the working title is quite possibly owning a firearm is a political act. Quite like that one. I like that one a lot. Okay, Graham, thank you again.
I like that.
Our next stop is New South Wales. Cool. We've had yourself and Robbie on, and once we've done the lap, we probably will come back again and maybe, I don't know, talk to some other people. Keep the momentum going.
Sure. Sounds good. There's some great people in New South Wales, and if you are talking to any politicians down there, the leader of the Nats is a really interesting guy to talk to.
Thanks
Okay,
very
I'll
much.
definitely try.
And he does have a firearms license
You
himself.
too.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Graham. Appreciate it.
Okay, have a good one.
See you, mate. Bye.
Rightio, that's a wrap from the team at the Hunters Campfire. We hope you had a laugh, learned something useful, or at least were a little bit entertained. And you feel a little bit more pumped up for your next hunting, shooting, or outdoor misadventure. As always, a massive thanks for the support from our friends at SSAA and Beretta Australia. Whether you're out there chasing game, telling lies to your mates around the fire, or just trying to remember where you left your boots. Stay wild, stay curious, and for the love of all things blaze, stay safe, so we can see you back around the fire next time.